5 months ago, Inga was sitting in the kitchen with her 20-year-old daughter Annika and 18-year-old son Bjorn. They were talking about Inga's husband Harry. Annika angrily asked, "Mommy, why are you complaining about Daddy?" "You're acting like a spoiled teenager. Daddy spoils you. You have everything you could ever want, but it's not enough. What in heaven's name do you want?" Inga thought she was right, but it didn't matter anymore, but replied, "I want variety. He's too malleable and never stands up for himself. I want him to have more firmness. I I want him to get angry sometimes." Bjorn interrupted. "Really? My father has gotten angry with me before, and I wouldn't want to repeat the experience." He shuddered at the memory. Inge continued, "I have a plan. I will stab, push, and abuse your father until he loses his patience and gets angry with me. Then, when he cools down, I'll make it up to him and tell him how much I love him. But to do that, I need your help." Annika looked at her mother disbelievingly. "I don't like that idea. If you love Daddy, you wouldn't put him through that kind of ordeal. Explain what you want from us." Bjorn intervened. No. I'll have no part in this. I took my father too far once and I still regret it. It hurt both of us and it took a year before he trusted me again. I'm warning you, Mom, it's not going to work out that way. And the problem with Dad is that you don't get a warning before he hits his limit. He just snaps. Please, Mom, don't! Inga didn't listen and laid out her plan. When she finished explaining, she looked at Annika and asked, "What do you think?" "I won't take Harry to the extreme, but I need him to stand up to me." Annika replied tiredly, "I don't like it anyway. Like Bjorn, I'm afraid it will drive us apart." She paused, shaking her head. "Mom, I'll help you up to a point. Just know that if things go the way Bjorn predicted, I won't support you, but will support Dad instead." "Fair warning," Inga agreed. "And you, Bjorn?" "Absolutely not. You hear me? Not a bloody chance. And if I see my father suffering, I'll tell him everything." Inga tried to talk Bjorn out of it, but he wouldn't budge. The next morning, "Harry! Harry, where's my coffee?" "I told you I wanted coffee," shouted Inga. Harry was stunned. What on earth happened, he thought. He came out of the kitchen with coffee in his hands. Placing it in front of his wife, he started to walk away without saying a word. "Well?" asked Inga. "Well, what? What took you so long?" "I'm not a coffee maker." "You know freshly made coffee? That takes time." "Don't talk to me like that." Harry trailed off. Inga's onslaught continued through the vacations. Bjorn tried to talk to his father. He could see that Harry was exhausted. But Harry calmly told him that this was only about Inga and himself. He would sort it out. Present tense. The car and the caravan were hurtling south on the A2 highway. One could feel the tension in the car. For Harry, this was one of the worst days of his life. In the morning, while loading the caravan, Inga's behavior towards him had deteriorated to outright humiliation, and Harry had nearly snapped. Now Harry concentrated on driving to contain his anger. He decided that he would meet Inga when they reached their destination. Inga could sense that Harry was almost at his limit. She didn't dare to utter a word. It was very difficult because she always had something to comment on his driving. After a 3-hour drive, they reached the spot and camped without uttering a word. With nearly 24 years of experience, it was easy enough, and Inga could not reproach Harry. They ate lunch in silence, and Harry went for a walk to unwind and regain his composure. 3 hours later, he returned. Harry felt refreshed, and his mood had improved considerably. Inga wasn't in the caravan, so he went in search of her. He found her at the other end of the campsite with other campers who were drinking wine. He walked over and said, "Darling, shall we go to dinner?" Inga looked up and replied, "Can't you see I'm in fun company? So if you would be so kind as to back off." The others smirked, but Harry turned white as a sheet. He glanced up again and saw Inga turn and put her hand on one of the men's thigh. He muttered, "As you wish, madam," and turned back to the caravan. He had had enough. Tomorrow he would meet Inga and leave her. Preparing himself, he pulled out his wallet, took his car, and drove to the village. At the ATM, he withdrew as much money as he could in one fell swoop. He did the same with his credit card, then found a branch of another bank and opened a new account. He then returned to the caravan, called his boss, explained the situation, and gave him his new bank account details. I need to take a vacation too. You can take your entire vacation if you need to. It's quite a lot along with all the overtime, almost 3 months. When this is over, you can write a compassionate leave request if the situation doesn't get resolved. Thanks, I'll be in touch. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Inga returned drunk, reeking of treason, and she mumbled inarticulately. Harry, come here. I want you. Harry replied through clenched teeth. No way in hell. Who knows what's been in there since tonight? Screw you! There was venom in his voice. Inga was too far away to notice Harry's mental state. She collapsed onto the bed fully clothed and went out like a light. The next morning, Inga woke up with nausea, a hangover, and a monstrous headache. She squeaked, Harry? There was no response, so she got out of bed and was immediately rewarded with a bout of vomiting. Still not getting any response from Harry, she crawled outside. Harry was sitting in the morning sunlight eating breakfast, coffee, croissants from the bakery, and orange juice on the table in front of him. He smirked as he looked at the unfortunate woman and said with a heavy sneer in his voice, Well, 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 look what the cat brought. You're not feeling very well, are you? Inga wanted to say something, but her voice refused to obey. Harry went on inexorably. You'd better keep your filthy mouth shut and listen carefully. Here are the car papers, the key, and the caravan papers. What, why? Muttered Inga. Immediately, Harry almost shouted, Shut your stinking mouth while I'm talking. Inga recoiled. Harry had never spoken to her like that, much less yelled at her. Harry continued, Bank cards are here, credit cards are all yours. I'm leaving. Inga felt so bad she could barely contain herself, but still managed to ask, When are you coming back? We need to talk. An icy calm descended on Harry. That's the wrong question, he replied. The question should be, Are you coming back? And the answer is, No, I won't. This is goodbye. With those words, he shouldered his backpack. Inga panicked. No, no, no. This wasn't supposed to happen. She screamed, whereupon she began to feel nauseous again. Harry waited, showing no compassion. Finally, Inga whispered in desperation, I love you. All I wanted was for you to be manly and stand up for yourself. I wanted you to be angry with me. Harry looked at Inga with disbelief in his eyes. You succeeded perfectly. I'm mad at you. I'm so angry there are no words to describe it. You'd better check the sheets when I'm gone. They look exactly the same as they did when we were married. Stained. I don't think the stains will come out. When you arrived yesterday, you smelled like a dilapidated brothel. Today, I wanted to have a very serious talk with you about the state of our marriage as a result of your behavior over the past few months. I've been questioning whether I wanted to stay married to you, but yesterday's behavior made me change my mind. Yesterday, you made my decision very easy. You should get tested for STDs. I'm pretty sure you'll be found to have one of them. Harry's last words cut through the fog in Inga's mind and crashed into her consciousness. So, my dear, I'm leaving as I asked. And with those words, Harry left. The physical discomfort and emotional onslaught had become too much for Inga to bear. Weeping inconsolably, she walked into the smelly caravan and passed out on the bed. Harry walked from the campsite to the village. He thought to himself, leaving was the easiest thing to do. What about now? What do I do now and where do I go next? He just walked on, feeling sad and dejected. In the early evening, Harry found himself a little north of Hallsberg. He was staying at a boarding house. Left alone in his room, he fainted. The enormity of the situation dawned on him, and the end of his marriage, a black cloud enveloped his thoughts. Harry could handle Inga's abuse, but adultery was a bridge too far. At the same moment, Inga woke up again. Her head didn't hurt as much anymore, but there was the taste of decomposed goat meat in her mouth. Carefully, she tried to get up. She was still wobbly, but her stomach behaved better. Then the stench hit her nostrils and she ran outside. Just before the entrance, she stepped in a dried puddle of vomit and another one a meter behind her. When she dragged herself inside this morning, she dragged her clothes through the mud. Breathing through her mouth, she went inside and gathered her toiletries, towel, toothbrush, and clean clothes before heading to the shower room. When the water was hot, she stripped off her clothes, feeling dirty. Stale semen was still leaking out of her vagina and coating the inside of her thighs. Bruises and hickeys were visible all over her body. She tried to remember what had happened the night before and the night before, but her memories were sketchy, to say the least. However, what Inga saw was very bad news for her marriage. It finally came to her that her husband had noticed her condition and had drawn his own conclusions. Harry had always been a gentle and forgiving man. He put up with her abuse and humiliation because of his love for her. If it weren't for her behavior in recent months, she might have had a small chance of saving her marriage after the affair, she thought. This combination was too much. She stood in the shower and cried. Harry sat in his room. Having cried his heart out, he had been doing what made him so valuable to his employer, analyzing and finding solutions to problems that seemed impossible to solve. Now he had to apply those talents to himself. He had a marriage to dissolve, and he had to act. The divorce should be relatively simple. They both had roughly the same income, but Harry needed somewhere to live, preferably close to work. He would never set foot in their house again. He called his boss and explained that the situation had deteriorated to the point where he needed somewhere to live. Harry was told that the company had several options and would have an answer tomorrow. In the meantime, he too went in search of an apartment. Inga washed and washed but kept feeling dirty and finally gave up. After drying herself off, she dressed and returned to the caravan where she recoiled at the stench. Dazed, she didn't know what to do. Calling her children after such a failure would be unwise, but instead, she set about cleaning up the mess under the awning, not wanting to meet their gaze just yet. After much swearing, the stench was gone, and she sat in front of the caravan, trying to resist coffee and cookies. Memories of yesterday surfaced in her mind, and Inga was shocked at her own behavior. The memories told her that it was what had happened. Stunned, she was trying to gather her thoughts and decide what to do when her phone rang. Annika? Mom, I can't reach Dad, and why aren't you answering your phone? What's wrong? We had a fight. Finally, you've gone too far, haven't you? Where's Daddy? I want to talk to him. I don't know where Harry is. He threw my car keys, papers, and bank cards in my face and walked away from me with my backpack. What did you tell Dad to make him leave like that? You know how he is when he gets really mad. Mom, you're in very big trouble. Don't I know it? I don't think he'll ever come back to me. Things have happened that Harry won't forgive. I can only hope the divorce will be amicable. Divorce. Mother, what have you done that you even think there's no chance of reconciliation? Inga pulled herself together and told the whole story as she remembered it, including Harry's taunts about good company. Her voice cracked as she told her daughter how she had told him to get the hell away. Annika gasped. Mother, no. You foolishly pulled all the plugs to get what you wanted, didn't you? I'm going to keep trying to contact Dad and talk to him. I'm certainly not going to get involved. You're on your own. I warned you from the beginning, but you had to do it. And it's you who should tell Bjorn. He'll be furious, and I'm not going to be your messenger. For now, you have 2 weeks in the caravan to work out your problems, including how to get home. Since you can't drive, you'll have to find someone else. I'm not coming to help. Bye. Annika disconnected and immediately called her father. This time the line was busy. She sighed and said to herself, Good news. Dad didn't crawl away under a rock. Annika waited for 10 minutes and tried again. Hello, Ani. How's my girl doing? Her father's voice sounded familiar but seemed very strained. I don't know, Dad. You left Mom, I heard. Are we still family? Harry snorted and growled. You've already talked to your mother. I'm assuming. So is she conscious again? More importantly, has she told you everything, including the sordid details? Wait. Before you answer that question, I'll answer no. In my opinion, your mother abandoned me, and it started about 6 months ago. Yesterday, she literally told me to screw off in front of her new buddies. I agreed, and now to my regret, I have to state, we are no longer a family. I just got a call from my employer. They have an apartment for me and a very good lawyer. I'm going back to the house now. I'm going to rent a truck and move out. I'll let you know my new address as soon as I know it myself. Annika inwardly shuddered. How angry her father was. I'd never heard him so frank and determined. He used to really love my mom. Now he seems to hate her to the core. She said as calmly as she could. Okay, Dad, I understand. One last question. Who's going to tell my little brother? Harry thought for a few seconds before answering. When you talk to him, just tell him that we broke up. Please don't tell the whole story. It will devastate him and I have no idea how he'll react. I told your mom that she should be the one to tell the whole story to you two. They disengaged and Annika began to cry quietly. Harry, on the other hand, was even more determined to see this through. Bullying he could handle and was man enough to respond when things went too far. However, cheating was an absolute no in his vocabulary. He thought back to his youth and his first love. Harry had been deeply in love. They had already planned the rest of their lives together when she returned from a vacation with her parents and told him she had fallen in love with a local boy. He forgave her and all was well until the next vacation. He was shocked to the core when he found some pictures of her making out with another local talent. When he asked her about it, she admitted that she had cheated on him again. Harry shook his head in disgust and spat on the ground at her feet before turning and walking away. He never looked back again, despite her entreaties. Never again, he thought, never again. Better the pain of a breakup than the humiliation of cheating on a woman. Even when her 4 parents supported her, begging her to show mercy once more, he told the girl to go and have fun. Thinking back on it, he realized that he would not be a part of such a scene again. Harry now packed his backpack and headed for the bus station. Next day, Harry sat in his house, he didn't call it home anymore, and drank coffee. In an hour, he had a meeting with CEO Gerard Dirksen and his lawyer. He had had a sleepless night packing things he felt he couldn't do without and family heirlooms, like a 250-year-old clock. CDs, books, and the like were already packed, and he was ready. But he didn't yet know what awaited him, so he delayed hiring a van. Knowing Inga, he guessed that she wouldn't make it home this morning, so he went to his office at the appointed time. On arrival, he was directed to the CEO's office where his boss was waiting for him. Harry, have a seat. Coffee will be here soon. Looks like you're going to need it. Did you get any sleep at all? Gerard shook his big head, very concerned when he asked Harry that question, for Harry was one of his best and most favorite employees. The customers loved him too. When Harry shook his head, Gerard continued. Harry, let me introduce you to Mrs. Ella Herveyer. She's going to help you with your divorce. I understand you still want a divorce, don't you? Harry replied, his voice trembling. Yes, of course. And as soon as possible. Seeing the look on the lawyer's face, he paused. Please know that I am very tired and have a very short fuse right now. I apologize in advance, but can the divorce wait until I get some rest? Gerard nodded. Harry, I just wanted to introduce you to each other so you could get yourselves together for this part. She nodded as well and they exchanged phone numbers, after which the lawyer withdrew. When they were alone, Gerard said quietly, Okay, time to drop the formalities. I'm Gerard and you're Harry. I've been in a similar predicament myself and I don't want to see one of my best men put down. That's why I'm trying to help. Now to the point. The company has 2 houses you can choose from. One in the city and one in the suburbs. The latter is close to public transportation stops and within biking distance. Harry didn't hesitate. Please, the one in the suburbs. I don't like living in the city anymore. Too much hustle and bustle. Gerard sighed happily. He had hoped Harry would choose this particular apartment. The city apartment was smaller, but it could be rented out for a lot more money. Okay, he said. Here are your keys and here's the address. The rent is $750 a month. That will be deducted from your paycheck. You can take Harold in the service truck to get out of your old house. He's waiting outside. Thanks, Gerard. You're welcome, Harry, but here's another thing. I don't want to see you here again before you talk to Mrs. Herveyer. If you need any help, you know where to find me. Harry realized this was a dismissal, got up and left the office to find Harold. First, they drove to Harry's new apartment and looked around. It was an apartment on the 3rd floor of a 5-story building with no elevator. The apartment consisted of a living room, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with a shower stall and a toilet. Near the entrance was a half bath and a large balcony overlooking a park with a large pond. The apartment was sparsely furnished with only one single bed. Harry said, Good, Harold. I can see that I don't need much of the old house. It should be over quickly. Let's go. 2 hours later, the truck pulled away from Harry's old house. He took everything he could possibly need with him, including bedding and personal items. Before he left, He wrote a short letter to Inga informing her that she could expect a letter from the lawyer as soon as possible. Inga was furious. Harry had left her at the campsite with the car and the caravan, so getting them home was another problem. The first thing she had to do was find Harry, beg and grovel, hoping he would show mercy. When she finally began to function normally, she went in search of a bus stop. She had never gotten her driver's license in the Netherlands because of her difficulties passing her driving test, and with public transportation and Harry driving her around, she had never needed one. Now, however, she realized she was stuck and at the mercy of the bus system. At the bus stop, she glanced at the timetable and to her horror, concluded that she had missed the last bus for the day. The next one was the next morning at 7 o'clock. Inga went back to the camp and tried to find the ones who had drunk herself into unconsciousness. They were nowhere to be found, so she turned to the camp director, who told her that they had left early in the morning after the party. She then tried to call Annika and Bjorn, but both refused the calls, and she returned to the caravan. In utter despair, with tears in her eyes, she began to tidy herself up, wishing this was the biggest mess she would have to clean up. The next morning, after a very restless night, Inga was walking to catch the 7 o'clock bus, but then the campground manager noticed her. "Are you heading to the bus stop?" "The first one, the 7 o'clock one, is for locals only. There's no transfer with the first bus, but there is with the second bus, which comes an hour later." "Thank you," Inga said. With trepidation in her heart, she decided to keep walking so as not to miss the next train. Much later, Inga finally arrived at the street where they lived. Everything looked as calm as ever, and she hoped that the storm had passed and Harry was ready to forgive her. A truck drove past, bringing her out of her reverie, but then there was silence again. The silence seemed even more unsettling now as she walked up the path to the front door. Taking her keys, she unlocked and opened the door, then called out, "Harry?" But she was met only by an eerie silence. She entered the living room, and the first thing she saw was that the antique clock was missing. Her stomach clenched, and she screamed, "No, no, no, this can't be happening! Everything is happening too fast. We should have talked first. You can't just leave already." Now Inga knew what had been missing when she entered the house, the ticking of that clock. It was as if a soul had been ripped out of the house. Shaking her head, she rushed to look around the bedroom and bathroom, but found that all of Harry's personal belongings were gone, even his books and CDs. Inga sank down in her chair, feeling that none of this was real. She had expected Harry to be home and he would be able to vent his frustration and anger, and then she would show her remorse, and they would make up. It was nothing like she had imagined. It was much worse. There was no way she expected him to ignore her and leave. Harry had always said to Annika and Bjorn, "What's worse? When someone is mad at you, or when someone acts like you don't exist anymore? Someone who is mad at you still has feelings for you, but if you ignore someone..." The last one happened when Harry caught Bjorn buying weird stuff for the party. Harry didn't even bother to punish Bjorn. He just said, "We've had this discussion many times. If you want to ruin your life, that's your decision. I want no part of it. You have a month to find a job and leave this house." Inga shuddered at the memory and the sudden realization that Harry was now doing the same thing to her. Instead of being angry with her, he was cutting her out of his life, ignoring her as if she didn't exist. But the worst part was that she had brought it all on herself. She walked uncertainly to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator to get something to drink to calm her nerves, but shut it with a clatter. No. What I drank that night was at least partly to blame for this mess. Inga went to the stove to make tea, but then she saw the envelope Harry had left behind. Tearing it open, she read the short note. "Inga, I have been humiliated enough. This marriage is over. I have hired a lawyer. I suggest you do the same." Inge exclaimed loudly. "He didn't even sign it. But I'm not going to just give up on me like that when he finally shows he has balls. If I don't get them, no one will." She threw the teapot across the kitchen, followed by the cup. Both shattered on the tiles. Almost a year later, Harry had found a steady rhythm. Sleep, work, eat, repeat, sleep, work, eat, repeat. When he arrived at his apartment, he found divorce papers in the mail. The divorce itself had not been smooth. Inga had tried every trick she could think of to get Harry to talk to her. He had consistently refused all attempts. Financially, things were much simpler. When Harry began divorce proceedings, their incomes were about the same, and that included retirement savings. The house was no longer mortgaged, and the real estate agent estimated that it could be sold for over $500,000. Harry's lifestyle was frugal, to say the least. Harry worked 12 hours a day, and because of this, he was doing very well. He earned some exceptionally high bonuses, so he had to find something to invest the money in before the tax authorities claimed an excessive portion of it. Harry decided to look for a house, with a garden, a place to mess around with his motorcycle, and a place he could turn into his library. He envisioned the place piled high with books, but he also wanted his high-end stereo and music collection to be there, and he thought it would have comfortable chairs and a couch. In addition, he wanted a large, well-equipped kitchen and 3 bedrooms. With these considerations in mind, Harry turned to the internet and people at work to find a suitable estate agent. When he found a well-established agent he liked, he emailed to arrange an appointment. When everything was ready, he decided to celebrate this sad fact and booked himself a ticket to see Johannes Brahms' German Requiem. It seemed the right choice to Harry. In the evening, after the concert, he found himself in a pub not far from the concert hall, the beautiful music still playing in his head. He had a very nice Dutch Genever in front of him when he heard a voice say, "Harry? Harry van der Goes, is that you?" He turned around and saw a tall woman looking at him intently. "I'm sorry, miss. You've put me at a disadvantage." "Do I know you?" asked Harry politely. The woman laughed. "Now I should be disappointed. That puts me in my place." "But no, not really. We went to school together. I was a year taller and ran with the popular crowd. I liked you very much because you were so reserved and mild, but at the time I wasn't supposed to, socialize with you. I'm Evelina Gedhardt. I'll also answer to Eve." Harry tried to think back to that time, but nothing came to his mind regarding Evelina. He smiled and replied, "I should remember a woman as beautiful as you, but nothing comes to mind. I hope you will accept my sincere apology. May I redeem myself by offering you something to drink?" Evelina replied, "I'm sorry, but I have a date. A rather unfortunate date, you might say. Can I have a drink some other time? If I can have your phone number?" A man appeared behind Evelina and growled, "Baby, don't be a wimp. This is our date, and you're going to have a good time with a real man." Harry wrote his number on a piece of paper, folded it, and held it out to Evelina. The man stepped toward her and told Evelina to hand the piece of paper to him. "You're my girlfriend, and I don't want you sneaking around with another man, even if it's a wimp." Evelina angrily replied, "You're drunk. I'm definitely not your girlfriend. I promised this date because you helped me when I had car trouble. But this was the first and last date if you really want to call this disaster a date. I'm just going to call an Uber because you're in no condition to drive. And I don't want to go anywhere else with you." "Well, you rooster, I'll show you," growled the man, raising his hand to slap Evelina, but Harry was quicker and hit him in the solar plexus with all his might with his knee. Suddenly, the man gasped and staggered backwards. Harry held him up to keep him from falling, and the man's fingers came to a standstill. Turning softly to the squirming man, he said, "This weakling is going to beat you to a pulp if you don't behave. Now here's the deal. You pay for the lady's drinks and leave quietly. I'll pay for the Uber. Now nod if we have a deal." The man nodded, and Harry let him go. The man turned, his face white with pain, paid, and walked away without a word. As he left, Harry called an Uber for Evelina, who watched the whole thing with widened eyes. "That's what I remember from school," she said. "Even the biggest bullies didn't dare touch you or your friends. And you were always helping people, teaching them, even the kids in our class. But you did your own thing to the rest. How could you do that to this man? He's so much bigger than you." Harry said quietly, "I've been practicing Krav Maga since I was 7 because I had serious anger issues. Krav Maga is a way to channel your energy and at the same time build your confidence so you can bounce back from problems knowing you can handle them if you need to. I was also learning self-control and discipline." An Uber pulled up a minute later. Harry paid the driver and said goodnight to Evelina. The next day, Harry's cell phone rang. He looked at it and saw an unfamiliar number. "Harry van der Goes, how can I help you?" Eveline answered, "Good afternoon, Harry. Tomorrow is my day off. I was wondering if you have plans for tomorrow." "As a matter of fact, I do. I'm going to look at some houses with a real estate agent." "Oh," was the only thing Evelyn heard. Harry could tell she was disappointed. Not wanting to lose momentum with this beautiful and interesting woman, he quickly came to a decision. But of course, a member of the opposite sex will help me with that. They are much more practical. Otherwise, I would have bought myself a cave. Can I interest you in helping me? Evelina's quick and enthusiastic reply left no doubt that she wanted to see Harry. Oh yes, I would like that very much. Do you know what you would like? Harry had an idea. Why don't we talk about it over dinner? Take your pick. Either I'll cook for you or you tell me what restaurant you like. Evelina laughed and asked, Can you cook too? Now it was Harry's turn to laugh. When I cook dinner, I never have any complaints or leftovers. Oh, and before you start saying that small portions are the reason, no, I don't make small portions. Really? I thought you were a bachelor who eats out every day. Before Harry could formulate a response, Evelyn continued. So you cook for yourself? Every day? Yes, Harry replied. I've become something of a recluse lately. Yesterday I went to a concert and had a drink for the first time in a year. Oh dear. How did that happen? It's a story that still hurts too much to share. The only thing I will say is that the night I met you, I received notice that my marriage was officially and legally over. I felt I had to celebrate the occasion. With a requiem. She paused briefly before saying, Oh, that's too bad. In that case, I think I'll take a chance on your culinary skills, Harry. Where and when would you like to see me? Harry gave Evelina his address, and she said she would be there around 6. At 6:05 that afternoon, Evelina stood in front of Harry's door and thought to herself, Nothing to be nervous about. But still she had to be, and with sweaty hands she rang the bell. Harry opened the door almost immediately. Ah, there you are. And oh my God, you're just beautiful. You look beautiful. Evelina was wearing a dress that skimmed her body and flaunted her long, slender form. Her long, dark hair was gathered into a ponytail, and light makeup emphasized her hazel eyes. Evelina blushed like a schoolgirl at Harry's sincere compliment and replied with a smile, Well, you don't look too bad for a cook yourself. But thank you. It's been a long time since anyone has complimented me. May I come in? Where are my manners? Yes, of course. The lasagna is in the oven and will be ready in about half an hour. I have melon and Parma ham for an appetizer. And what would you like to drink? Evelina had a lovely evening, although she drank a little too much. The wine was a strong Italian wine that went well with the lasagna, but after the third glass, she felt a little dizzy. Then blue al ramandolo, an Italian blue cheese, and port were served for dessert, which only made her feel worse. At the end of the evening, Harry looked at her and said softly, I think I'll take you home. You've had too much to drink. Evelina, now quite relaxed, replied, Harry, I'd rather spend the night with you. When she realized what had come out of her mouth, she blushed so hard that her skin was red all the way down to her cleavage. Harry smiled with pleasure. I wish nothing better, Evelina, but I have a very strict rule. I will not sleep with a woman who is over the limit. And I mean the limit for driving an automobile. I had that rule before I was married, and my divorce reinforced it. Get laid, and we'll see what tomorrow brings. Half an hour later, they were in front of Evelina's house. Evelina turned around, looked at her feet, and whispered, embarrassed, I know you don't think I'm pretty enough to take me to bed, but can I have a kiss? Stunned, Harry took Evelina's face in his hands, forced her to look up into his face, and said, Dear Evie, how can you think I don't find you beautiful? Please believe me, I think you are a gorgeous woman and would love to make love to you. He paused to let her comprehend what he had said. But Evie, not when you're half drunk. I don't want you to do something you might regret and ruin what's going on between us. To be completely honest, I'm in love with you and I don't want you to be my one-night stand. When he asked, Is the message clear? It was a promise. Tonight would be fantastic, but we've only known each other for a few hours. I'm falling in love with you, so I want things to happen slowly. So do you still want to go house hunting with me tomorrow? Or are you too disappointed in me today? Evelina raised her head and looked at Harry. Disappointed in you? When you're the first man since my divorce who hasn't jumped into bed with me not because I allowed it, but openly and honestly explained why. I'm not that easy to get rid of. You know, I like you too, and if this is an example of what's to come, I'll gladly wait. It'll be worth it. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll make breakfast, okay? The next morning around 8, it was Harry's turn to be nervous. He knocked on the door and it opened almost immediately. He took a deep breath and said, "My God, woman, I need to focus on the house today. The way you look makes it completely impossible." "What an outfit." Evelina melted in his arms and giggled. "And yes, Harry, I've fallen in love with you too, and I'll wait like you said. This is just the beginning." After a delicious breakfast, Evelina asked Harry to wait so she could change into something more suitable for house hunting. When she returned, she was dressed modestly in a sweater, jeans, and sneakers. "Shall we?" she smiled, taking his hand. When they met, the real estate agent looked very businesslike, but he kept looking at Evelina. He told them, "I have 4 houses, 1 in the city, 2 in the suburbs, and 1 in a small village nearby. But it needs more work." Harry immediately responded, "Skip the one in the city. I've made it clear I want a garden." As the agent walked them through the houses, one of the suburban houses was also cast aside and they drove to another. On the way, Harry couldn't get rid of the thought that he had seen this man before. The agent chatted incessantly with Evelina, praising the house, the garden, and the neighborhood, while paying absolutely no attention to Harry, his client. Not feeling comfortable with the situation, Harry checked on Google Maps for the location of the neighborhood and found that it was very close, almost too close, to the airport. After all, this wasn't a quiet neighborhood where planes flew most of the day. As he listened, he heard one fly overhead. Listening, he checked out the other houses that had recently sold and the prices on them. Twice as much, he thought. Other houses had sold a ton cheaper than this one. It must be a pretty good house for that price. Or... Harry watched Evelyn and the agent's conversation more closely and noticed how sneakily the latter was trying to seduce Evelyn, just as he was trying to deceive him. The house itself was nothing special to be worth so much, just one of 13 by the dozen, a virtual replica among many others. Realizing this, Harry frowned and muttered quietly under his breath before launching his attack. "So tell me, do you want someone else's girlfriend too?" The agent looked at Harry in surprise. "What do you mean?" Harry replied, and there was a venomous note in his voice. "Well, you're trying to bilk me out of an extra 100,000, and you're also trying to seduce my girlfriend. Now back off. I'm leaving and I'm going to file a complaint with your agency." He turned to Evelina. "I think we're done here." Evelyn, who had guessed the agent's intentions, was more than surprised by Harry's reaction and asked why as soon as he left. "First, he's not treating you with the respect you deserve. Secondly, he tried to swindle me out of an extra 100,000 for the house. And I know him from somewhere, but I don't know why or where. Now I don't trust him, so I'll call a cab to take us back, and we'll check out the last house ourselves when we get the keys at the agency." After a short conversation at the real estate agency, they got the keys to the last house. In the car to Formont, Evelyn asked, "Harry, am I your girlfriend?" Harry smiled dreamily before replying, "Officially? No. But that guy was hitting on you, and along with the grossly overpriced house, he pissed me off. Also, I know that face from somewhere, but I don't know from where. Now, to give you a full and honest answer to your question. Yes, I was a little jealous, and I would really like you to be my girlfriend. So, Evelina, I know we only met a few days ago, but it feels like months have passed. Could you be my girlfriend?" Evelina looked at Harry in surprise, trying to see if he was joking, but he looked completely serious. She asked, "You're not kidding, Harry? I'm fighting my way back from a very abusive marriage, and I can't go through something like that again. Please don't ask if you're not serious." Harry smiled uncertainly and replied, "I'm as serious as a heart attack." "Harry, I already told you that I liked you back in high school, and in this short time, you have only confirmed my impression of you. Yes, I would love to be your girlfriend." The house in Formont turned out to be the one, but it had problems, so Harry called in a specialist to check how structurally sound the house was, and a contractor to see how much it would cost for a new roof and fixing other problems. Harry had other ideas, but those had to wait. The house, given its dilapidated condition, was well within Harry's budget, but because of the way Harry had been treated by the first real estate agent, he had rather angrily offered a price 50,000 below the asking price. He said to Evelina, "Now we wait. It's getting late, how about dinner?" 3 weeks later, after hard bargaining, Harry could call himself the owner of the house in Formont. The owner was happy, Harry was happy, only the real estate agency was far from thrilled. The owner got 10 grand more than he expected, and Harry paid almost 40 grand, less than the agency had put the house on the market, so they lost a lot of commission. Everything fell into place when Harry's company offered him a new contract. It was much better than the previous one and was for 3 years, and Harry decided to celebrate. Harry and Evelyn were celebrating in a restaurant when Evelyn asked, "Harry, your company also deals in company stock, doesn't it?" "Yes." "Why do you ask?" "When I divorced my ex-husband, he was quite wealthy but tried to hide it. His twin brother knew about it and decided that after all the abuse I'd suffered, it wasn't fair, so he told the judge. I'm living well now, but my ex is still trying to get his hands on those stocks. I need to transfer them." Harry replied that he would look into it the next morning. Later that evening, he asked about something else that was keeping him busy. "Isn't it time for you to meet Annika and Bjorn?" "If you want to, of course." Evelina happily told him that she would love to and that it was a big step for her. Harry then told her that he would invite them over for dinner so they could get to know each other. 2 weeks later, the four of them sat in a very nice Turkish restaurant at a table laden with food, the delicious flavors wafting into their noses and making their mouths water. After the initial awkwardness, Bjorn and especially Annika got along very well with Evelina. They were joking with her and teasing her father when, to their surprise, Inga appeared next to the table. Harry flinched. "Inge, you're not invited. What do you want?" Inge smirked. "I'd like to take a look at your new slut. Is she your fourth or fifth already?" And she walked away. Harry looked around and asked aloud, "What is she talking about? How did she know we were here?" Annika replied, "We don't know, Dad. Maybe she was following one of us." A few minutes later, Evelina excused herself and went to the bathroom while Harry and his children talked about Inga's sudden appearance and her remark. When asked, Harry replied, "Evelina is the first and only woman I've had a relationship with since our marriage broke up, and we didn't meet until the evening of the day the divorce was finalized, a year after it began." He was about to say something else, but then Evelina returned, flushed and very angry. "How could you? How could you treat that poor woman like that?" she exclaimed, practically shouting. "I don't want to see you again, ever." Evelina ran out of the restaurant to the stares of everyone. Inga returned with a smirk on her face. "So," she said, "now that it's over, you and I need to talk." Harry stood with a murderous expression on his face and spoke through clenched teeth. "If we were the last two people on Earth, I'd rather kill myself than talk to you. Go to hell." Harry looked into Inga's eyes with rage, but she could see he was ignoring her through his anger as he turned to their children. "I'm going to pay for dinner and then find Evelina to find out what the hell just happened." He walked away, and Inga was about to follow when Annika grabbed her arm. Angry, Inga turned to her daughter and then stared furiously in the direction where Harry had disappeared. Annika said in a voice shaking with anger, "Inga, how could you? You're not my mother anymore. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't want to see you anymore. Lose my number and forget my address. You're dead to me, understand? Dead. Now back off." Bjorn was much less eloquent. "I agree. The same goes for me." And in the same breath he added, "Come on, Annika. The air near this table is polluted." They walked out, leaving Inga puzzled when the restaurant owner appeared beside her. In a whisper he said, "Madam, because of you I have lost a very good customer. I urge you to leave before disaster strikes." Inga turned to him. "Are you threatening me?" The landlord replied, "No, madam, but my bouncer will drive you out by force if necessary." A few minutes later, Inga found herself on the street without the aid of a bouncer. She was furious with Harry. How dare he walk away from me like that? And then walk away again without waiting for an answer? She simmered, thinking about everything that had happened and coming to the conclusion that she wouldn't find him this evening. The next morning, Harry tried to contact Evelyn, but she refused all contact. Even his letter came back unopened a few days after it was sent. Harry was devastated and went back into sleep, work, eat, and repeat mode. When Evelina suddenly disappeared from his life, all thoughts of socializing ceased, and in the days that followed he stopped seeing people at all, except for his children and those who were at work when necessary. A couple weeks after the events at the restaurant, Harry was called into the office of Gerard Dirksen, the CEO of the company. A few seconds later, lawyer Ella Herveyer came in. Gerard's usual friendliness vanished when he asked, Mr. Vander Goose, are you familiar with the no fraternization clause in your contract? Surprised, Harry replied, Yes, of course. Why do you ask? The lawyer interjected. Because we have evidence that you are communicating with one of our clients, Mrs. Evelyn Gethard. Do you have any comment on that? Harry was stunned. He stammered, Not really. I knew Mrs. Gethard before she became our client. Mrs. Herveyer immediately snapped back. You know that's the reason for the dismissal, don't you? The company can't afford scandals if the relationship goes sour. This conversation should also mean that your contract is terminated. HR will inform you of the procedures. However, we will need your laptop and phone. Harry's blood pressure began to rise. He counted to 10 and back up again, but by 0 he was still exploding. The angrier Harry got, the softer and more emphatic he spoke to his opponents. Now he spoke almost in a whisper. You've got it all wrong. Mrs. Gethard and I were friends before she became a client of this company. In fact, I brought her here when she needed someone to handle her accounts. We haven't seen each other in 2 weeks, so if you terminate my contract, I'll consider it wrongful termination and act accordingly. One more thing. The laptop and the phone are private property. From me. I can show you the receipts. They come with me. Now it was Dirkson's turn to stammer. He hadn't expected Harry to answer. This whole affair with Harry's ex-wife had made him think Harry was a cocky guy. This time he stumbled half-heartedly. There is confidential information on these items, so I demand them. What are you demanding? Check your contracts. That information is kept confidential between the account holder and the account manager of this company. I am the account manager. This is blatantly clear. All the accounts I handle have my signature underneath them. Not yours. Now what do we do? The lawyer, clearly hurt in his ego, said, Your contract is terminated immediately. The reason will be fraternization with the clients. You will receive written confirmation when you get out. I will need a list of the accounts you handle so we can let them know they will soon have a new account manager. I'll also confiscate your laptop and phone. Harry grinned grimly. Good luck with all that. You'll hear from my lawyer soon. Several months later, Harry walked out of court with a grim face, even though everything had gone as he had predicted. The company was to pay Harry the full amount for the remainder of his contract, including bonuses based on the average of the previous 3 years. In short, given his lifestyle, he didn't need to work anymore. To make matters worse for the company, several account holders asked Harry to continue working for them and transferred their business from the company to Harry. The judge remained deaf to Mrs. Herveyer's and Mr. Dirkson's complaints that Harry had stolen the accounts. Leaving the courthouse, Harry called Annika and Bjorn to invite them to celebrate with him that evening. But first he headed home. He needed to bathe. His house was finally finished and had everything he had dreamed of. A library, a large kitchen, a garage, and next to the master bedroom, 2 self-contained guest rooms. In the back, he had built an outbuilding with a gym and a pool for working out. The pool was only 2.5 meters wide, 8 meters long, and 1.6 meters deep, but Harry installed jets to create the effect of a fast-flowing river in it. Since the pool was installed, Harry used it every day. Physically, Harry was in great shape. Swimming, running to exercise his cardiovascular system, and Krav Maga to increase his strength and stamina made him so, but mentally, he was slowly sinking into the water. It wasn't long before he bought himself an old 1968 BMW R69S. It still stood untouched in his garage. Harry couldn't find the energy to take it on. Outwardly, with his customers and children, he was on his usual behavior. Internally, however, he felt insecure and depressed and decided he would never enter into a relationship again. The trust was gone, and in the end, it was too painful. Annika and Bjorn agreed to meet early at a restaurant, which coincidentally happened to be the same one where Evelina had run away from Harry. They were both very worried about Harry and couldn't find a way to bring him out of his depression. He refused counseling. He refused to go out, politely turning down every woman who showed interest in him. The brother and sister discussed the situation, but seemed to be getting nowhere. During their conversation, they noticed Evelina enter the restaurant with a man in tow, but had no time to say anything to her before Inga suddenly appeared at their table. Annika looked at Inga and said very loudly and angrily to her mother, "What are you doing here?" Inga replied, "I want to talk to you two." This farce has gone on long enough. I am your mother. Björn stood up and looked his mother in the eye. After what you did to my father, I no longer have a mother. You practically destroyed my father, and neither I nor Annika will tolerate that. You're not welcome here, and you're not welcome. There's no way my father would take you back after you ruined him like that, and I seriously suspect you're the one behind his firing from the company. So in your own words, be so kind as to back off. Ignoring her mother, Annika pulled out her cell phone, dialed a number, and said, Dad, we are coming to your place. We'll take something with us. What would you like? Why? Asked Harry in surprise. Oh, this restaurant is infested. Harry's children headed for the exit, but saw a man, Evelina's apparent companion, suddenly leave her and intercept them as they walked outside. Hello, he said. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jake Gedhart, Evelina's brother. It seems this schemer tricked my sister about your father. Can we meet privately sometime to talk about it? Annika was surprised by his revelation and suggestion, but she was thinking fast. Here it was, our chance. At least, Lord, I hope so. She quickly handed Jake a business card, writing her personal number on the back, and then smiled across the room at Evelina to show that she had no ill feelings toward her. To Jake, she said, Please call me soon. My father is a hermit now, and we can't get him to relax. As you saw a moment ago, there is nothing my mother can do to help. Jake nodded and turned back to his sister before directing her to their table. Evelina, sensing apprehension, asked her brother, What are you doing? That man wants nothing more to do with me. Jake replied, That remains to be seen. And you haven't been on your best behavior since you ran away from that troublemaker either. I suspect you still have feelings for him. Take that chance. I'm calling, He looked at the card and realized he didn't even know the girl's name. Annika, tomorrow, first thing in the morning to get things sorted out. It has to be done now or the momentum will be lost. The next morning at 8:30, Annika's phone rang. She saw an unfamiliar number. Annika van der Goes speaking, good morning. Annika, this is Jake. We met yesterday. Good morning to you too. I hope I'm not too early, but I don't want to give Evelina time to cool off. I'm quite sure she still has very warm feelings for your father. When can we meet? No, Jake. You're not too soon. In fact, I was hoping you'd call soon. My father is sinking into depression. He's trying to hide it, but we can see him snap. We're at our wits' end. You said that Evelina still has feelings for my father? Oh, yes, of course. When we meet, we, or rather she, will tell you about it. My sister has been moping ever since she ran away from that restaurant. I've made 2 reservations for us there already, hoping to meet you, because I didn't know how you or Harry would react if I somehow managed to contact you. A 3rd time wouldn't hurt, would it? Can you come to my place, say around 5? I know it's early, but I think we have a lot to discuss and we need to find some common ground. I'll call my brother and see if he's free at that time. Hopefully, we can work out something that will make 2 people happy. By the way, you must really love your sister to go to such lengths. I do. She's always taken care of me. Now would be a good time to repay her in kind. I'll see you at 5. If your brother can't make it at 5, have him come as soon as possible. I'll send you the address and prepare a meal. Okay. We'll take care of the drinks. Wine, beer? Which do you prefer? Can we have both? I like beer and Evelina likes wine. Consider it done. Have a good day until 5 o'clock. A few minutes after 5 o'clock, 5 people were sitting around the huge kitchen table. The 5th person was Jake's wife, Lisa. She poured wine while Jake loaded the table with food. A large platter of turnips, carrots, potatoes, and chicken legs, slow roasted in the oven with rosemary, lemon, and garlic, freshly baked bread to dip in the juices from the roasting, and, as an appetizer, spicy chicken broth. After looking over all the dishes, Annika politely inquired, Are we going to talk while we eat or wait? No, Jake replied. We'd better start right now. Annika looked at Evelina and asked her, Evelina, can you tell me what our mom told you about my dad? Evelina blushed. I'll give it a try. Keep in mind that she described my ex-husband to the smallest detail. That's why I panicked. She took a deep breath and said, I went to the bathroom. Your mom was already there. She asked if Harry had told me why he was divorced. When I answered that I hadn't, she said she would tell me because I needed to be warned. She told me that he had been verbally and mentally abusing her for months, and on the first day of the holiday, when she went out for a walk, he went for a drink with some strangers. When she came back, he was making out with another woman and told her to back off because he was having fun. Annika and Bjorn looked at Evelina meaningfully, shaking their heads before Bjorn replied. The story is almost true except for one detail. It wasn't my father who did this to my mother, but the other way around. Furthermore, my mother arranged for my father's dismissal on false charges. He was having an affair with a client, you, Eveline, and they had a picture of you and my father on the day she had her dirty talk with you. Eveline turned white as a sheet as Bjorn spoke. When he finished, she said in a thin voice, "Is Harry all he appears to be? I left a decent man because I was stupid enough to believe the lies your mother told me?" Evelina began to sob uncontrollably. Annika walked around the table and whispered softly in her ear, "Maybe there is still a way to make you two happy with each other?" She looked around the table and asked, "What should we do?" Lisa commented, "No matter what we try to do, your mother will always try to disrupt everything. The mental state she is in right now will always cause problems, so I think you two need to deal with that first. Now I can think of something, but it's not something you're going to like, so you decide for yourself." Bjorn immediately replied, "Lay it out. We'll do almost anything." Lisa continued, "You have to let your mother back into your life." Both of the Harry children looked sharply at Lisa and wanted to say something, but she held up her hand. "Hear me out," she said. "In order to do that, she must fulfill a few conditions. First, she must leave your father alone and stop interfering in his life. And second, she must see a psychiatrist to sort out her problems. There is something wrong with her." Annika and Bjorn looked at each other for a few moments and then nodded slowly. "That's an idea." "We can do that, can't we, brother?" Annika said. "So what do we do about my father?" Harry lay in the pool and swam until he was exhausted. He was having a bad day and was venting his frustration out of his body. In his 47 years, he looked very trim. Swimming in Krav Maga did wonders to his body. He had to buy himself new clothes because the old ones didn't fit anymore. His shoulders became broader and muscles appeared on his arms and back. His stomach became flat and taut and his butt became firm. He had never been a couch potato, but now women, and some men too, were starting to pay attention to him. That's why he was so upset that night. Harry was rich, lived in a nice house, and generally looked like a healthy specimen of the human race. The only problem was that after 2 failed relationships, he wasn't drawn to trying new relationships. Women, especially women, started hitting on him, and he had to politely talk them out of it. That day, one female client was unwilling to take no for an answer and threatened Harry to transfer her portfolio to another company. Harry advised her of his old company and turned the woman down, much to her dismay. Finally, as his muscles ached with fatigue and his lungs burned in his chest, he staggered up the stairs and climbed out of the water. He was just wiping himself down when the doorbell rang. Harry put on shorts and a t-shirt, checked the outside camera, and angrily opened the door. "Inga, how frank do I have to be?" "Whatever you want, the answer is no. Now go and get out." Harry slammed the door shut and activated his security system, turning on recording mode. If it came to a fight, he wanted to demand a restraining order, and for that, he needed proof. Inga felt good as she approached Harry's house. Earlier that day, she had finally received her health certificate. The year before, her escapades had been rewarded with a very tenacious syphilis. Tonight, she planned to make it up to Harry. Inga hadn't seen Harry in months. She had tried every possible way to get him to talk to her. Since he hadn't responded to her emails and texts or returned her calls, she had ruined his date and ruined his job. Now she's here to offer her help because without a job, he'll be left without a livelihood, wouldn't she? Inga dressed for the occasion in something that would have driven Harry crazy in the old days. She'd also done her hair and spent an hour in front of the mirror from her dressing table. Confident in herself and her plan, she rang the bell. The door opened quickly, and she looked up to see her ex-husband. This was not the man she had known before. This man had broad shoulders and a trim figure. Only the hunted face reminded her of the old days, and Harry's reaction caught her off guard, leaving her wanting more. Harry had answered her with the same words that had ruined her marriage and then slammed the door in her face. Inga felt tears threatening to ruin her makeup again. Right after meeting with his ex-wife, Harry's phone rang. What? Dad? Oh, I'm sorry, daughter. I thought it was your mom. She was just at the door. What did she want? I don't know, I didn't give her time to open her mouth. I yelled at her to get out and slammed the door in her face. So reconciliation hasn't come for her yet? Daughter, when your mother ripped my soul out of me for months on end and sliced and diced it openly cheating me, I developed a void where my soul used to live. Somehow that void was filled again, but something in me was gone. My love for your mother has all but evaporated, and some of my empathy for other people is gone too. There is no place for Inga in my life anymore. Please realize that she is your mother, and you only have one. Don't do anything you might regret later, like forbidding her to live with you. And Evelina? I don't know. I've tried calling her for days on end, but to no avail. I decided she didn't want to see me anymore after that conversation with your mother, so I blocked her number and deleted it. But I still dream about her, and I wake up with pain and longing for her. Dad? Yes. When will you come out of your shell? I don't know, my dear daughter. I know that psychologically I'm in a bad state. I'm not ready to seek help from a psychiatrist yet. Besides, I am driven crazy by women who think I am easy prey or need their help. One last question. Can we come over tomorrow? Maybe for dinner? Okay. 6 o'clock. Use your keys so I can swim from 4 to 5 and still have time to cook. I'll like that idea. Okay, Dad. I'll see you tomorrow. Love you. They left, leaving Annika thrilled. She immediately called Evelina. Eva, be at my place tomorrow at 3:30. We have to be at Dad's between 4 and 5. I tricked him into believing that Björn and I were coming to dinner. Start thinking about what to wear, Annika said cheerfully. Evelina on the other end of the line was excited too and replied, Thanks, Annika. See you later. In fact, Evelina had already decided what she would wear if given the opportunity. She would wear the same outfit she had worn when she had opened Harry's door that morning when they had set out to find the house. She smiled, remembering the effect it had had on him. Inga had tried many times to reach her children. She had written letters. She even knocked on their doors, but her number was blocked. Her letters went unanswered, and the doors wouldn't open. Desperate, she turned to Annika again. Mom, why are you calling? You know we don't want to talk to you, right? I needed to hear your voice. You are my daughter, and I miss you, both of you, very much. Please tell me, what do I have to do to see you again? I already tried to help your father when he was fired, but he wouldn't let me. Ha! Dad doesn't need any help, especially not from you. He's been doing really well lately. She paused, sensing it was the right moment to continue their plan. Björn and I were talking about you the other day, and Dad even told us that we only have one mom and will regret it later if we keep ignoring you. So Björn and I have come up with 2 things you need to do before we start talking to you. Are you listening? Yes, yes. Anything. I'll do anything. Okay, let's get started. 1. You're going to leave Daddy alone. Stop messing up his life. We both know who intimidated his girlfriend into running away and who fired Daddy because of that picture. The best part is that they did the procedure so badly that Dad left pretty rich and took a bunch of clients with him. So leave Daddy alone. Inga was shocked to hear this but nodded, even though Annika was far away. Okay, I promise. And secondly, you're going to see a psychiatrist to help you deal with your obsession with Dad. Otherwise, in 6 months, you'll start doing it again. Deal with it. He'll never take you back. Never. Well, I don't know. I'll go with you. It's part of the deal. And Bjorn? Is he going to go out with me too? I speak for both of us. We already agreed beforehand and knew you'd call me. Then I'll agree to both terms. Good. Let us know when your first doctor's appointment is. I'll go with you as promised. And leave Daddy alone. Inga was delighted. Annika and Björn wanted to talk to her again. She didn't like the conditions, but in time she would be able to get around them. She would leave Harry alone for the time being. She would have another try when the family was back together. The next day, Annika and Evelina walked into Harry's house, and Annika whispered to Evelina, You look absolutely stunning. Evelina smiled nervously. She whispered back, What am I going to do now? I'm so nervous I'm nauseous. Better yet, surprise him in the pool. I'm pretty sure he won't run away from you from there, Annika said. Evelina threw her coat on the couch and looked around. The austerity of the house said a lot about the state of mind Harry was in. Gathering all her courage, she walked through the gymnasium to the pool. There she saw Harry swimming, taking long, strong swings. She noticed how he had changed. His shoulders and back muscles bulged with exertion, but his head was constantly in the water. He would never see her standing here. She took a deep breath and made up her mind. Evelina didn't notice that the jets in the pool were running at almost full capacity. The current carried her under the water, and seconds later she collided with Harry. Instinctively, he grabbed her, and it took another second for the current to carry them to the other side of the pool. There, Harry pressed the emergency button, and the current subsided, though Evelina clung to him as if her life depended on it. Harry looked up from the button and saw Eveline's panicked face. Evelina, what are you doing? He began. But Eveline began to gasp with fear and panic. I was all that came out of her mouth. Evelina cried, Don't chase me away, please. Don't kick me out. Please let me explain first. Harry was completely stunned. Very surprised, he replied, I won't kick you out, but you'll have to explain a few things. First of all, how did you get here? Annika shouted from the gym door, You can blame me, Dad. I have coffee and tea in the kitchen. So when you behave yourself? Evelina, are you coming? Evelina smiled and shouted back, I'm coming. When I come to my senses. But it might take a while. As Harry and Evelina entered the kitchen, they met Annika's questioning gaze. Harry, smirking, explained, She jumped in the pool. Evelina added, He didn't want to look up, so I had to. But I won't do that again, ever. The three of them sat down at the table. Annika said quietly to her father, Dad, I hope you're not angry with us for meddling in your life, but you're so unhappy. We had to do something, and that's when we met Jake and Evelina. Harry frowned. Jake? Evelina quickly interrupted. My little brother. Ah, Harry replied. I think I'll stop trying to understand all this. I'll explain if you promise me you won't get angry and let me finish the story because it's quite long. Annika already knows. That's why I'm here now. That's what I understand. And I trust my children unconditionally. That's why you can explain everything, otherwise you would have been banished by now. Evelina took a deep breath, looked at Annika appreciatively, and asked, Should I start? The sooner this is over, the better. Harry only nodded. When I met you, Harry, I was on my first date after a marriage that failed for me, and you saw for yourself how it ended. A disaster again. I was married to an abusive control freak. It started out as a dream marriage, but soon the abuse began. First verbal and soon physical. You saw my reaction in the pool. Real panic. That's because my ex repeatedly tried to use his equivalent of a waterboard on me. She noticed his look and nodded. The police? Where we lived, they were very conservative, and women should know their place. Don't expect help unless you show bruises. I could never prove he was violent until I went too far and he sent me to the hospital. Now he's in jail. And then I met you. Harry, I've always liked you. At school, you went your own way and didn't take any crap from the jocks. Ignored the queens, even when they threw themselves at you. They only did it because you ignored them. They couldn't handle it. You also helped anyone who asked you with math, chemistry, and physics assignments. Even when we had only known each other for a few hours, I felt like I had known you for years and was in love with you. When you asked me if I wanted to be your girlfriend, I felt like I had never felt before. You took your time and didn't rush me. About a month later, you took me to meet Annika and Bjorn at that restaurant. Your ex-wife showed up there and announced with a chuckle that I was your fifth girlfriend, as if you were dating all of us at once. My heart dropped. When she told me these lies about you, she described my ex-husband to the smallest detail. I panicked, and the only thing I could do was run away as fast as I could. It took me a few days to calm down. I was so scared that I ignored all your requests to talk to me, returned your letter, and didn't open it when you were at my door. A week later, I saw Jake and told him everything that had happened. He in turn said it was probably all a lie from a jealous ex-wife. After that conversation with my brother, and with his support, I tried unsuccessfully to reach you. My calls didn't go through. Harry nodded, remembering how he had blocked her number and deleted it from his contact list. I didn't have the courage to knock on your door. I was afraid you'd turn me down, she said, bowing her head. Harry asked, How did you have the courage to show up today? Jake, Bjorn and I pushed it, Dad, Annika replied before Evelina could open her mouth. And Evie, why did you decide to jump naked into my pool? Evelina's heart twitched. He'd called her Evie, his pet name for her. She replied, I don't know. You had your head in the water, and I wanted your attention so badly that I overcame my hydrophobia. When I was swept away by the current, I was so scared, Harry, but you saved me. Her eyes were cloudy, and she fought back tears as she continued to speak. I'm so sorry I ran away without asking for your side of the story. I just don't know what possessed me. And I'm sorry that I showed cowardice and came here. Can you forgive me? Harry looked at Annika, then at Evelina. He whispered, Evie, I already told Annika that I still dream about you and it hurts every time I wake up. I don't have a choice, do I? Do you know the song Avalanche by Leonard Cohen? It begins, I've been caught in an avalanche. It covered my soul. You became that avalanche, my avalanche twice. The first time was during our first dinner together, and the second time was when you kissed me. Evelina's mouth opened, closed, and opened again, but no sound came out of it, and tears overwhelmed her. Harry knelt down beside her, took her face in his hands, and forced Evelina to look into his eyes. Evie, look at me. Do you really want to be with a broken man like me? I would love to take you in again. But we both have issues we need to work out. Maybe we should see a therapist. Both of us and work it out from there? Finally, Evelina found her voice. Does that mean you accept me back? No. After a second, Evelina turned white as a sheet, but Harry quickly continued, wiping a tear from her cheek. I never told you to leave, did I? You ran away on your own. In fact, I should ask you if you want me to come back. Evelina couldn't believe her luck and squeaked, Yes, I really do. I was such a fool to let myself be played with like that. Can I stay here tonight? That's when Annika intervened. Papa, Evelina, I'm sorry to interrupt, but now that everything is safely over, I have something else to tell you, and it concerns Evelina. Give me a break, Cupid daughter. Annika took a deep breath and began. Bjorn and I have decided to let Mom back into our lives. On 2 conditions. 1, she will leave you alone and stop sabotaging your life. The second is that she seeks help from a psychologist. I will accompany her myself. Good, said Harry decisively. It is very wise of you to allow your mother to return to the house. That pleases me very much. If it will help relieve future tensions, I promise to be well behaved when I meet her. Annika and Evelina raised their heads, both wanting to say something. Harry continued before they could. That doesn't mean I'll invite her to dinner, but there will be a time when you or your brother will want to have a family dinner or something like that. You won't have to choose between 2 parents because of me. I can't speak for your mother, of course. Annika sighed. Oh, Daddy, you're so sweet. Thank you, and she kissed his cheek. And now I'll leave you 2. Evelina, are you coming? She grinned. Evelina, still unsure, looked at Harry. Do I have to? Harry smiled. Not on me. I have a spare bedroom. He laughed loudly and said, But whichever room you choose, you'll find me in bed. Evelina blushed and smiled at the same time. Before going to bed, they went to the bed and got busy. Harry's breathing gradually returned to normal, and he was the first to find his voice. Will you marry me? She straightened up abruptly and looked at Harry with big eyes. What did you just say? Harry repeated, Will you marry me? Evelina was silent for a long time and finally asked, Do you really want to marry me? You don't have to. I am yours, without or with a ring, and I solemnly promise you that I will be by your side in good times and bad, and that I will leave all other men behind. Harry replied, That is enough for me. I promise the same, except as far as men are concerned. Let it be other women for me. Consider us married. Now do you want to move in or do I? Evelina laughed a happy laugh and told Harry she would get her things out of the apartment. I don't have that much to move, she said. I think I'm still in a state of flight after my divorce. Dear Evie, he can't hurt you anymore. The next morning, Harry called Annika and Bjorn to tell them the happy news, and after breakfast, he and Evelina went to get her things. 1 year later, Harry had finished swimming and was looking at Evelina, who was making slow paddles in the pool. It had been a while, but she had overcome her hydrophobia. Harry hummed to himself as he walked back to his office. He made a small detour along the mailbox, pulled out the mail and tossed it on the desk. Coffee first, he thought. He prepared 2 cups, set them on the table, and was just beginning to look through the mail when Evelyn walked in, still staggering slightly after their lovemaking the night before. She sat down and took the cup he offered her. After sorting through some of the stacks, she remarked aloud, "One unstamped letter is addressed to you, not your company." Harry took the letter and immediately recognized the handwriting. He groaned loudly. "No, not this." She promised. Evelina asked, "Harry, look at me, please." Harry looked up and Evelina continued, "I know Inga wrote that letter. We talked about it when we met at Bjorn's. We talked, all 3 of us. Inja's counselor made quick work of her idea to bring you back, but she had a hell of a time putting Inja back together again. When Inga realized what she was going through, she fell apart and became depressed. Now she is on the mend, and this letter is partly her redemption. Please read it. It will help you make sense of the situation." Harry growled, "I don't need a relationship with that woman. I need to be left alone." Evelina stood up, took the coffee from Harry's hands, and sat on his desk facing him. "No, you need to, Harry, or she will continue to haunt you. Read the letter." The last word sounded forceful. Harry knew better than to object when Evelina addressed him in that tone. Nodding slowly, he agreed and opened the envelope. "Dear Harry," "Yes, it's still Dear Harry to me, even though I know you think otherwise and I still love you. I also know from our children that you are so far gone from hating me that you don't care about me in any way. When they revealed this information, I was stunned. But enough about me. In this letter, I want to tell you that I'm sorry. When you left, you said you were so angry with me that there are no words to describe it. Now I don't have the words to tell you how sorry I am. I destroyed our marriage beyond repair. I tried to ruin your life at least 3 times, and I alienated you so much that you stopped caring about me altogether. Annika and Bjorn made me go to counseling, and the counselor was brutal. She told me I was jealous, selfish, and entitled. I hurt you terribly because of that. I'm not going to apologize, not because I don't want to be forgiven, but because I don't think I deserve it. The children have told me that you will behave civilly to me. You can do that by ignoring me. I have dated several men. I realize now that I threw away because someone told me that you need strife to make a marriage interesting. I have strife but no marriage. I only ask for one thing. Please let me into your life for the sake of our children. I'm not going to pursue you again and I won't invade your life again. But please, when we meet, will you talk to me? Even just to say hello? I long to hear some words from you. With remorse and love, Inga." Harry looked at Evelina's expectant face and sighed slowly. I'll think about it. Don't expect an answer anytime soon. I don't like people prying into my feelings." Evelina wanted to say something but stopped when she saw that Harry's face expressed nothing, and his eyes were like stones, completely devoid of emotion. She nodded silently, realizing that she needed to give him time. Harry went to his garage to fiddle with his second BMW. It was a 1949 R24, a 250cc, 15.25 cubic inch, single-cylinder motorcycle. At the workbench, he began to disassemble the carburetor, but there was no way he could concentrate. When dinner time came, Harry still hadn't said a word, and Evelina began to worry. "Beloved," she said, "what can I do to help?" "Do you want to talk about it?" Harry replied gruffly, "Can you cancel that letter?" "I wish I'd never read it. I feel like I'm being blackmailed through my children and by my children." Evelina was stunned to hear such a harsh response from Harry. She said soothingly, "That's not true. No one is trying to force you to do this." Harry stood up and began to pace around the room. "It's not true. You talked about this letter with Annika, Bjorn, and my ex-wife, and you encouraged me to read it. So what else would you call it? Persuasion, perhaps? I promise I will give it some serious thought in due course. But right now, I feel like a complete asshole again. Perhaps I'll go away for a while to let my thoughts get back on track. Evelina went pale at these words from Harry. She had expected a reaction, perhaps even a strong one, but such rage the three of them hadn't even expected. Harry said, "Tomorrow I'll take a caravan and go to Limburg for a while. I'll book a camping spot." The next morning, Harry drove south and grumbled to himself. Bloody hell, just when I think I can leave that woman behind, another bloody rabbit comes out of her hat. And to top it all off, I got the only available campsite in the county, in the same damn campground where it all started. It was about that time that things started to get hectic in Formont. Evelyn called Annika, but she didn't pick up. Finally, Evelyn got through to Bjorn. "Hi, Evelyn. Is everything all right?" "Something's wrong because usually you don't call me. You call Annika." "Bjorn, Harry read Inga's letter yesterday. It went badly, very badly. He said he felt blackmailed, and he didn't say a word except 'see you later' this morning when he left for Limburg with the caravan." She cried, "Now I don't know what to do." "Oh, damn it," replied Bjorn. "This is something we didn't expect. You know what? I'll come over after I contact Annika and break the bad news to Mom. The only thing we can do is wait and hope Dad cools down. Pull yourself together and stay calm. Dad will come back to you. Don't be afraid." Still, despite his assurances, Evelina was very afraid. In the afternoon, Harry arrived at the campground. He was shown a beautiful spot with an endless view of the sprawling landscape. He quickly set up camp and then went in search of dinner. After dinner, he went to look around the campground when he noticed a familiar face at the site next to his. Due to circumstances, the spot and the face came together, and Harry recognized the real estate agent who was also one of the men who had entertained his ex-wife and infected her with syphilis. Harry's heartbeat quickened, and he felt a surge of adrenaline, anticipating annihilation. Fortunately, the man moved away from him, oblivious to the danger a few meters away, and Harry, trembling with rage, headed for his caravan. There he sat motionless for a long time, pondering before finally going to bed. After a restless night, he rose the next morning to stop by the manager's office for a little chat. When Harry started to question him, the manager said, "I'm sorry. I know these people are bad news. I've heard rumors, but until I have proof, I can't deny them. I already have a CCTV camera pointed at them, but the ladies always enter their caravan voluntarily." "And if I manage to provoke them?" asked Harry. The manager smiled and said, "I know nothing, as Manuel always said in Faulty Towers." Harry laughed. "Yep, you're from Barcelona," he said, referring to Manuel's origins. "But we understand each other." Leaving the office, Harry began to formulate a plan. "Good morning, gentlemen." Harry smiled. He hoped the agent didn't recognize him. He hadn't shaved in days, and this man had met him over 3 years ago. Harry looked very different these days. The man lifted his head, red-shot eyes and dark gaps beneath them. He wheezed, "What do you want?" Harry replied with an innocent face, "Me? Nothing, but since we're neighbors, I came to offer you coffee. You seem to be in need of a cup." The man looked at Harry suspiciously. "Why would that be?" Playing dumb, Harry replied, "It looks like you were having fun last night, and I'm all alone here." Harry left the rest of the sentence for later. After a little thought, the man said, "Call me Abe and bring something strong to drink. It's ladies' night." "Okay," Harry said. "What time?" "About 3, Abe replied. "My buddy's coming too." Harry went for a walk and, as Abe eloquently said, for a drink. He bought a bottle of brandy, whiskey, and a bottle of young Dutch Genever that looked like water. Harry replaced most of the Genever with water. He was taking a risk, but most people didn't drink Genever anyway. At 3 o'clock, Harry walked over to the phone with the record mode on and placed it face down on the table. He was surprised to find Abe and his buddy in the company of a young woman. "Hi, I'm Bridget." Harry sat down and whispered to Abe, "A bit young, isn't she?" Abe replied, "Oh, she's 19, but who cares? You'd be surprised how easy it is to get a woman on her back. We even had one a few years ago who told her husband to bug her off because she was having a good time. She just came to us. Can you believe that? Then when he was fired, we had a really good time with her. She got so drunk, but we left early in the morning. We didn't want that person to run into us. It's just a shame she gave us a nasty venereal disease. Harry couldn't believe his ears. He asked, "What if the woman doesn't want to?" Abe smiled insincerely. "Oh, that question is easily solved, but I like it better when they're willing and active." Harry noticed that Abe had very delicately started spiking Bridget with alcohol. It had started innocently with a glass of white wine, but within an hour he had talked her into a cocktail. After dinner, the woman had had more than enough to drink, but still refused the advances of the two men. Abe and his friend also exceeded their limit and became more aggressive. Eventually, Abe said, "Time to engage Daddy's little helpers." Harry made sure the CCTV camera was focused on the spot, and his phone was still in recording mode on a table nearby. He said, I don't think I like this." "Cooled off? What are you going to do about it?" Abe grinned. Harry, determined to escalate the situation, looked at Abe and muttered, "Which one of you needs to be treated for syphilis?" "Oh no, of course, both of you." Abe's friend turned purple. "How do you know that?" he shouted. "Because it was my ex-wife who treated you to it, asshole. And now that I know how you act, I'm going to put a stop to it." Harry expected more, but before he could react properly, Abe lunged, and a knife suddenly appeared in his hands. Harry then staggered to a chair and sank down onto it. "Evelina?" "Yes, Bjorn?" "What happened?" "Dad, he's in the hospital." "He was stabbed and the police want to arrest him for abuse." "What? What happened? Is Harry okay?" "I don't know. I know he needs surgery. That's why they called me. As soon as Annika is here, we'll pick you up and go to him." "Please, yes, I'll pack a bag for him." For a long time, the car was quiet. Bjorn kept the car just below the limit for which one could lose his driver's license. Evelina sobbed softly. "I wish we had never given him that letter. After all, it was the reason he went there in the first place," Annika said in a quiet voice. Bjorn focused on the road in front of them, but couldn't help himself. "Dad's not for getting into a fight. With all that Krav Maga, he's learned to stay away from them. I guess he had to defend himself or he'd be ambushed. I've seen what he's capable of. I almost feel sorry for the other man." 2 hours later, they arrived at the hospital. They were met by a police officer. "Good evening. I'm Officer Janssens. May I know who you are?" Introductions were made, and Janssens continued. "Mr. Vander Goos is no longer a suspect. Judging from the CCTV footage and phone records, it was pure self-defense. It appears he also saved a woman from being raped. 2 men attacked him without warning. I must say that Mr. Vander Goos has proven himself to be very good. The 2 men are going to really regret taking him on." "2?" asked Evelina. Annika interrupted. "How is he? Is he in danger?" Janssen said he didn't know, and they would have to ask the doctor. Finally, after asking directions several times, they reached the right room. There a nurse informed them that Harry was being operated on. His condition was serious. It was assumed that he would pull through, but he had lost a lot of blood. No one said anything about there being no guarantees, but everyone understood. She told the anxious trio that they could wait there or rent a guest room across the street, promising that they would be called immediately when Harry returned from surgery. Annika, Bjorn, and Evelina crossed the street in the middle of the night. There the waiting began. Beep, 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 beep. "What's that noise?" "Shut up! Don't you know I have a headache?" thought Harry. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't move his tongue, and his lips seemed to be sealed shut. He heard a rich, deep voice. "Ah ha ha, there he is again. Mr. Vander Goos, if you can hear me, please raise your right hand." Harry, rather tentatively, complied with the request. "All right," said the man. "Let me introduce myself before I explain a few things. My name is Derriter, Dr. Derriter, and I'm going to help you get back on your feet. You just escaped the Grim Reaper, so you'd better calm down a bit. First, I'm going to free you from some of your restraints and wet your mouth. Then you'll see some very anxious people, but I can't stress enough that you need to calm down." When he and the nurse had finished taking out the tube, the doctor opened the door and gestured for Evelina, Annika, and Bjorn to come in. He looked at Evelina and muttered something like, "Lucky bastard," then left. Evelina was covered in tears when she finally asked, "What happened?" "I shouldn't have given you that letter." Harry smiled and whispered, No. It cost me, but now I have a clear answer to Inga's letter. He closed his eyes and whispered, I'm so tired. In a few seconds, he was asleep again. After a short visit, Evelina and the children went to see Dr. de Ritter. The knife nicked a major vein. Fortunately, we got there in time. As a result, he only had to reinforce the wound. The wound itself has been stitched up, and he will be sore and numb for a while, but he will be able to go home next week. Keep in mind that he will have to wait at least 3 months before he can start practicing any martial arts he likes again. Bjorn asked, How do you know my father practices Krav Maga? Krav Maga, that explains a lot. Officially, I'm not at liberty to tell you, but you should have seen the other two guys. One of them will need a cane for the rest of his life, and the other is eating through a straw for now. A week later, Harry was sitting in an armchair at his house with Inga's letter in his hands. When he said in a sad voice, When I first read the letter and went camping, I was inclined to give up and let Inga back into my life. 3 pairs of eyes stared at him. The men at the campground turned out to be the same ones Inga had been having fun with almost 4 years ago. When I gained their trust, they, not knowing who I was, said she was the one who had given them the venereal disease, not the other way around. They also said she became drunk after their entertainment, not before. I can only conclude that she had already cheated on me before I dumped her. She is absolutely not coming back into my life. However, I will treat her like a stranger because I don't want my children to have to choose which parent to invite over for a visit. And it's my responsibility to tell her that, so I beg you not to interfere. Please promise me? After 2 weeks, Dr. de Ritter allowed Harry to begin exercising again. For the first few weeks, he exercised under the supervision of a physical therapist. 6 weeks after the flight and fight, he pondered how he should proceed in his conversation with his ex-wife. Unable to find an appropriate way, he decided to improvise and see what would happen. A week later, Harry was waiting at the same restaurant where Inga had tried to ruin his budding relationship with Evelina. Evelina and Harry were now deeply in love with each other. Evelina had gotten rid of her insecurities during their counseling sessions together, and Harry was slowly shedding his distrust in the meantime. He saw Inga entering the restaurant and was surprised to see that she had guests. He stood up and waved as both women walked to his table. Inga, I see you've brought company for a private conversation. Inga wanted to cry. This was not the reception she had hoped for. She and the consultant had discussed several scenarios, and this opening was the one she dreaded the most. It was one of the worst scenarios. Inga knew it wouldn't be easy. That's why she had brought the counselor with her, hoping that she could defuse the possible explosive situation. Harry, can I introduce you to my counselor? She's here to lend me some support. Ah, I see. Still trying to manipulate me. Harry turned to the other woman. Maybe I should have brought my counselor with me as well. You see, I needed one too after that woman was done with me. He turned to Inga again. I promised you dinner and your support is also welcome. Let's sit down. Inga was on edge, but Harry insisted, food first, then conversation. She also noticed that Harry ate very little and rarely drank wine, but he looked completely relaxed. Finally, having finished dessert, Harry asked, So Inga, what do you want from me? Inga almost choked on her ice cream. The counselor jumped up. Sir, you're being rude. Inga is trying to resolve difficulties between the two of you. This isn't going to help. Difficulties? You can't even realize the agony she has caused me. Inga, you know I was in the hospital, but do you know why? Inga was still thrown off balance by Harry's cold, almost hostile attitude toward her and her counselor. She answered a little audibly. At the hospital, yes, but I don't know why. The kids haven't told me anything. Harry looked at both women and asked, Are you wondering why? Both women nodded affirmatively. Inga, after I read your letter, I needed to do some serious soul-searching. And it was only necessary to do so because the people I love, the ones I'm sure love me, asked me to do what you begged me to do. So I took a caravan and headed south. Upon arriving in the neighborhood, I started looking for a campsite. As luck would have it, the only available spot was the one where your specially created hell for me unfolded in full force. Apparently, fate had it so that there I met the 2 men with whom you had arranged your entertainment. I wanted revenge, so I tried to win their trust. I succeeded, and with great success, I must say. They bragged about their past adventures. During Harry's explanation, the blood slowly receded from Inga's face. She never, not even in her worst nightmares, thought Harry would ever recognize these people again. However, Harry continued relentlessly. They were willing to do anything to get the woman, so I stayed close by, using the CCTV cameras to record the scene and my phone for sound. When I objected and insulted them, they started a fight. One had a knife. Here, Harry paused, took a sip of his drink, and looked Ing straight in the face. I have part of this recording on my phone, and I'm going to share it with you both. The female counselor interjected. I don't think that's necessary. Harry's answer was quick. I'm sure it isn't, but you're not my counselor, and I think it's absolutely necessary that the reason for my decision be clear beyond any doubt. He turned on the tape, and Inga trembled with excitement. This was the part she had been hiding from everyone. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the tape exposed her lies. When the recording ended, Harry's eyes, unlike hers, were devoid of any emotion. His face was calm. These people only recognized me after the recording was made. I used it to encourage them to attack me. But the information was given freely. So, ex-wife, I have come to the conclusion that months before this event, you indulged yourself and cheated on me with at least one man, and maybe several. Not only had you humiliated me and insulted me constantly for almost 6 months, but you had completely backed out of your wedding vows. And even if I didn't think your grand finale at camp was enough to make my decision, it sure helps. There was a heavy silence at the table. Harry looked grim as he said, To paraphrase you, can't you see I'm in good company now? So if you would be so kind as to back off. With those words, Harry got up, paid the bill, and went home to be with Evelina, the woman he loved. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.